And today we are going to begin the patriarchal narrative. Patriarch means, what does patriarch mean? Leader, first father, father of a clan. And there are 4 patriarchs in the Jewish faith, the Christian faith. Who can name them for us? Abraham, Isaac, yep, Israel, Jacob. One more. Nope. Joseph. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and Joseph. We won't get to Moses yet. So as we look at this period, if you're looking on a calendar or you want to know about when this is taking place, it's taking place somewhere. Begins somewhere in the mid-Bronze era. We don't know exactly when Abraham was alive, but it was sometime in the mid-Bronze era, which would be around 2000 to 1900 BC. So that's around where it begins, is the 2000 BC. And it goes until right before, sometime before the Hyksos reign in Egypt. The Hyksos, which we'll talk more when we get into Egypt, the book of Exodus, but Hyksos were a group of rulers in Egypt, and we know it took place before then. Their reign was from 1720 to 1570. So these stories take place somewhere between 2000 BC to 1570 BC. So there's about a 500-year period where these stories could have been taking place. And we don't know exactly when it took place. We've tried to calculate it back, and some people tell you we know exactly when it is. But in reality, time, archaeologically speaking, has a funny way of being lost in the sands of time. We're saying it, so we do know based on clues, evidence is found in archaeology, the way they're living, what happens, certain key events like the Exodus, which we have an idea of when that took place. So you're looking at about 2000 to 1500 BC. The people we're going to see here are largely nomadic, which means they have a wandering lifestyle. Tents are going to be the primary housing. They're going to edge and flow with where their sheep can go. They're going to be herders mostly, not so much as farmers. The farming was around, but these people that we're talking about are not so much in farming. They're going to go kind of wherever the herds take them. The winds take them, the lands take them, marauders will push them, and all that wonderful thing. The patriarch will be the head of the family, not just the immediate family, but the entire clan. Whoever's has, so like Abraham will be the family of the entire extended family, the entire group. And their kids and their kids and their servants and their servants and everyone, the patriarch is going to be the head of that entire group. Like we would say, like here in the United States, we might like the chief of a Native American tribe or First Indian tribe or whatnot. Women, unfortunately, you're going to see many cases where women are largely seen as property. Not entirely true, but it is true of the society that they're living in, and especially when they come in contact with different people groups, like the Egyptians and the Mesopotamians. Women are largely seen as property. In fact, a harem, which equals power, is woman, gold, and land, and it will be referred to. That's how you define, and we'll see this as we look at the kings, all the way up into David's reign and his kids. How do you define power? Well, how many women do you have? How much land you have? How much gold you have? And that's, course, as they settle and become a unified nation, military might will also go into that as well. But that's kind of how the land, the lifestyle of the people they are. So let's start. Avram. We say Abram. The Hebrew word letter there would be more of a V sound. Avram. In Genesis chapter 17, verse 5, Avram will become, who's Avram? Abraham. God will change his name. Name change denotes what? What is the significance of a name change? We'll see this throughout the scriptures. It's very important. Very important. What's the significance of a name change? New job, new title. Promotion. Okay, I see what you're saying there. Relationship, that's good. In this case, as we see, we're going to see this. It actually denotes more of an ownership, which does kind of follow the way you guys are saying, but it's kind of more of an ownership issue. And we're going to see this as as we saw this back when Adam named his wife Eve. Kind of that ownership, now I control you kind of thing. God will change Abraham, Sarah. Sarai will become Sarah. Saul to Paul. These are Israel, Jacob. We're going to see this throughout the scriptures, that this name change. And it even goes the opposite for other religions too. Remember Daniel and his three friends? They all have Hebrew names when you get into it, and then their names are changed to Assyrian names because the Assyrian gods now own these people. And so that's it. That's what that signifies, is that they're owned by the Assyrians and their gods. So Avram. Now Abraham means father of nations. Avram means exalted father. I think this is kind of cool. So he goes from being exalted father. So he was already kind of the patriarch, the exalted father of the town, and he was. But it goes. So when God takes possession, he becomes so much more. He goes from being an exalted father to being the father of the Haman, the nations, the multitudes. So God takes him and makes him so much more. And that's what that name change is showing, that he's going to become so much more as God denotes. This is the story of, the story of Abraham is a story of growing faith. As you read through it, and we're not going to, I wish we had time to go through each and every single instance in the scriptures. We're going to have to skip some, being an intro. I mean, that's just reality. We're not doing an in-depth study on, Abraham. That could take us years as it is. But the story of Abraham is a story of growing faith and a life that grows in faith. As Abraham grows, his faith will become more and more. And through him, all the families shall be blessed. Not just the Jews or the Christians, but all of the multitudes. All of the multitudes are going to be blessed by Abraham. All right. So, Abraham. All right. There we go. I'll bring up a nice map here if I can. If it'll stop doing the little spinny thing. I don't know if you guys can see that. Yeah, a little bit. It's not too bad. You might need your glasses for that one. All right. So when we meet Abraham, at the end of chapter 11, Abraham is moved by his father Terah with Lot, Abraham's nephew, and their families. They move from to Haran. Now, let me see if I can do this on here. I have the ability. Now, let's see if I have the talent. Let's see. Is down here, and Haran is right up here. There we go. And you can see it. Very good. So, is one of those major cities in the Babylonian life, and lots of people were moving out of the area and moving north. This was a migration that was happening not just in Abraham's life. This was something that a lot of people were doing. And then from Haran, they would move either down south towards Egypt or into the Turkey region that we see where modern-day Turkey and north. And people were spreading out as they followed the rivers. They went through the Mesopotamian rivers, and then they were kind of spreading out from there. We see this archaeologically that a lot of people were making this transition. So Terah, Abraham's father, according to Jewish tradition, was an idol maker. Now, according to Joshua chapter 24, verse 2, it says, Joshua said to the people, "Thus says Yahweh, the God of Israel, long ago your ancestor Terah, the father of Abraham and the father of Nahor, lived beyond the rivers, and they served other gods." So in the scriptures, we know that that his father Terah was at least an idol worshiper. So definitely at least an idol worshiper, which means he worshipped other gods. But according to tradition, which is found in the Midrashes, the Jewish Midrash, he was an idol maker. According to it, he was one to the deity Sin, like you spell C-S-I-N, which is not sin in the way we think of sin. That's an English word. S-I-N is a deity of the moon and the chief deity of Now, Abraham grows up in the city of which would be located today in southern Iraq, near the city of Nashira, on the now abandoned channels of the Euphrates River. It was an important Sumerian city in the time of Abraham, between 2025 and 1700 BC. The city of actually kind of a cool city, if we archaeologically speaking. It covers about 60 acres, which is pretty good size for a city of that era, and could be compared to any modern city today. It had libraries and schools and a law system, and it was a rich city. At the site of all, not Laughlin. It was a city full of worship of other deities, even to the point that it was suggested by some, and that every female in the city at some time in her life would have to take her turn in serving as a priestess prostitute in the temple. Priestess prostitute. We're going to talk more about that later on, but the idea is this idea comes probably from the rite of Reiduntum, the temple of Ishtar, which is a deity at Sippor. The rite it's a rite of passage in which a lady would sacrifice her virginity to patrons at the temple. Herodotus, one known as the father of history, states that every woman, rich or poor, is required to sit at the temple of Ninlil and have intercourse with stranger who signifies his choice by throwing a silver coin into her lap. The woman had to accept the coin, which then became sacred. But she had intercourse with the stranger outside the temple. Once the rite had been observed, the woman was absolved from her obligation to the goddess, and money could no longer purchase her ever again. Prostitution in religion is actually a very common thing. The idea that you would have temple priestess that involves sex. A lot of ancient religions and religious practices did involve sex, and sometimes I think we gloss over how much sex is even in the Bible. We're going to talk about moments in like the book of Numbers where they have sex in the temple and someone kills them for it, but what they're trying to do there is enact these prostitution rites that were from the Mesopotamians. The idea is they're fertility magic. If you partake in these sex rituals, then the god or gods would bless you with fertility, more land, more, so I guess maybe let's take a moment and look at some of the worship in Sumer. Now, when I say the worship in Sumer, I'm skipping ahead a little bit, but that's okay. We're at that point. Worship in Sumer is something we have to look back at it, so we're gathering information from here and there. So some of your books, if you go back and study it, you say, well, this and that and this and this. I'm giving you a brief outline. So it's going to be, so if you might find a book that says something different than what I said, it's because I'm giving you something that's very brief and covers a large span of time. Worship practices change over time. Think about just even at our churches today, how much has changed since like the 1950s or the 1900s. How just the way we sing, the way we worship, the way we practice, the way we dress, and these are often what causes fights in churches is the transitions from one point to another. But so I'm going to look at worship in Sumer at a very brief area. Some of you guys like this stuff. There are 4 leading deities in the Sumerian world. An or Anu is the supreme creator of the sky. He's the supreme creator god. His name literally means sky. Enlil, also known as Ilil, Ilu, Numenir. Enlil, my personal favorite way to call him, is the god of the air. The next one, I have no idea how to pronounce most of the time. She has about 30 different names. Nina Hersag, Ninman Maha, Ninutu, Mama, Ninsigsig. She's the queen of the mountains. She's the mother goddess. We would call it often Mother Earth. Enki, Lord of the Soul, also known as Ea. EA. And so, I guess let's cover these ones too before I say that. There are three chief astrological deities, astral deities. These are Nana, the moon, also known as Sin, in Semitic. She seems to be a female until she joins with the Lord of Haran. Sin is both male and female, depending on the time period you're discussing it. So, kind of an interesting period there. Utu, the Lord of the Sun, son of the moon. And then that last one there is probably the one you guys have seen probably the most. She's probably the most famous of the Sumerian deities. This is Inanna or Ishtar. She is the moon's daughter, queen of the skies and heavens, goddess of love, fertility, and war, because, love and war go together. This is probably the deity who marries Yahweh in the times of Isaiah. And we will, if you read through the book of Isaiah, a lot of them, the people worshiping these false gods began to join the God of the Israelites with these other gods. And Ishtar is probably the one that got married to Yahweh. And so if you look up online, does God have a wife? Well, it'll come up with several articles talking about how the ancient Israelites, about the time of Isaiah, did marry her to this one because they thought, well, every god has a wife, and that's how it happens in all the other religions. But the book of Isaiah directly talks against this kind of behavior. Let me see what my next. Yeah. Now, worship of these gods, I guess this is why I tell you this. Worship of these gods involved temples and ziggurats. Remember those buildings we talked about that were like stacked pyramids? And these were staffed by the priest who offered sacrifices and made libations, and singers and musicians, as well as male and female prostitutes. This kind of worship, and we're going to see it over and over again. It's going to plague Israel really all throughout it. The god Baal is going to be worshipped, and he's not a Sumerian god. He comes later on. He's a Canaanite god. We'll talk about him later. He'll be worshipped until the time of David, and even then he'll see him pop up from time and time again. But the Sumerians, as they start, they will conquer the Israelites several times, and they'll be trade partners with Israel, and they'll be so they're going to see this kind of worship over and over and over again, and it's going to plague the Israelites. And this is important because when we look at Avram and Abraham, it's important that we keep in mind that he is not a 20th century Christian. This is the world he is interacting with. This is the world he came from. This is how he grew up. His father very well may have made idols for these gods. And it's important that we keep this in mind, that, that God is calling him away from this lifestyle. He's not some monk that's being called away by God into some separation of the world. God is calling him out of all this junk to something different. This is going to be Abraham's separation from this is going to be the separation that's going to separate the Jews and the Christians to follow, that we're supposed to be spiritually separate from the world around us. And so when we look at this, we got to remember, and so things like the child sacrifice of Isaac, which we're going to talk about later, I don't think we'll get to it today. It sounds abhorrent to us. But we're not in the same world that Abraham was from. Technically, we're in the same earth. But it's a different reality, really. I mean, they worshiped these gods. They had different practices, different, child sacrifice is not unheard of. It's not overly popular, as you can understand why. Anyone who has a kid can understand why it's not overly popular. But then again, we have child sacrifice today. We just call it abortion. We had to do it inside the womb. They had to wait till it was out of it. That's all abortion is. Child sacrifice. Sacrifice to comfort, sacrifice to my lifestyle, sacrifice to whatever. Bad choices. So as we go forward, we're going to realize that this is the world Jesus that they're dealing with, and this is going to be all the way through in the Canaanite gods are influenced with these. The Sumerians are a warlike people. The Assyrians, you're going to see them in the Bible. The King James Version always translates it Chaldeans. You guys remember those in the Bible? Chaldeans. That's these people, the Chaldeans. This is the worship that they come. This is the people that Abraham comes out of. All right, so Abraham is called. Now let's. Do we need to take a stand-up break? You guys look like you're a little tired. Do we need a break? No? Okay. If you guys are tired, don't be afraid to stand up. It's all right. You're not going to hurt my feelings any. If I can teach college students, I'll let anyone stand up. It's all right. Genesis chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. And Yahweh said to Abram, "Go out from your land, from your relatives, and from the house of your father, to the land that I will show you. And I will make you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing. And I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you I will curse. And all the families of earth will be a blessed in you." Wow. This is the Abrahamic covenant, which God is promising him really three things there. See if you guys can pick them out. What's number one? Okay, nation. I'd say that's number two. There's something before that.
His name is going to be great.
Okay, that goes along with nationhood. Having a name, having great. There's something he says, I'm going to give you land first. Land. I'm going to have a name, have land. Then you're going to be a nation, which nationhood also means you're going to have lots of descendants, lots of kids, lots of your kids and your kids, and your name, your lineage isn't going to die out anytime soon. And then I'm going to give you one more thing. Well, sort of. Let's go right above it. Blessing. Let's focus on the blessing, less on the cursing. Blessing. God will bless. And I like how he says that as you will bless those, and it's really saying that, as you are a blessing to others, God's going to bless you, and you're going to bless others, right? It's going to flow through that. I say that a lot in the pulpit, right? It's from God to us to others, and that's kind of what the passage is. Love God, love yourself, love others, right? The flowing of the blessing right here is the same kind of pattern that we'll see. As God says, love God, love yourself, love your neighbors, right?
Sounds like John 4:22, salvation came from
Absolutely. And so it comes from God to the Jews and then out to the world. And we're seeing this is the blessing, and that pattern is going to be all throughout the Scriptures. For us individually, God blesses us, we bless others. For us as a church, God blesses us, we bless others. For us as a nation, Israel, for the Israelites, from the Jews to the people. Now remember, God is going to take what was a multitude and He's going to focus on one people, one family that becomes a family group that then, through Jesus Christ, goes out and blesses the whole world. God's going to focus on one. So we have this idea that the one can bless the many. Already here, we're already seeing this Jesus. We're seeing another Jesus hint, right? One can bless the many. Here's a hint of Jesus right there, setting up the theology that one can bless many, right here. And so Abraham is commanded to go, but he doesn't really leave his family behind, does he? He takes his nephew Lot, and we're going to see that causes some problems too. But he takes his nephew Lot, and they go to the land of Canaan, which will become Israel. And they travel past it into Negev, which is the desert to the south. Negev and desert is the same Hebrew word, and south, it's all the same word. Because the desert's to the south, and it's and so they go into that, and then they'll travel on into Egypt. Egypt and Israel are going to have a love-hate relationship through all of its history. Israel often go to Egypt for refuge, for protection, and Egypt will protect them, will give them resources. But then it often goes back the other way. The Egypt conquers or controls over Israel, and personally, I think that's why it's important that Jesus went down into Egypt. This love-hate that He left Egypt without being controlled by Egypt. This is this idea, but even Jesus goes down, their family goes to Egypt, right? And, it's something that we're going to, and I need to do more study on this love-hate relationship with Egypt, but it's, Egypt. So they leave, they travel down, do a lot of traveling, and they go to Egypt. Now, while in Egypt, Sarai, Abraham's wife, is going to masquerade as his sister. This is Abraham's idea. Isn't it amazing? This is mirrors of identity, not models of morality. They show us who we are, not that we're supposed to behave like these people. Abraham goes to this land. He's afraid that he's going to be killed because his wife is so gorgeous, apparently. She's the Helen of Troy of that era. And says, well, you pretend to be my sister. You're going to lie and be my sister. Now, God will follow through with His blessing, His promises, despite. I love the way God works, right? It shows how God's going to keep His promises despite Abraham's bad behavior. And Abraham is going to, but because God has, the story is actually kind of interesting. So Sarah, the Pharaoh, the king of the land, the Pharaoh, sees Sarah and takes her for himself. He wants her for himself. So he treats Abraham very well, giving him money, livestock, servants. Very well may have picked up Hagar, Ishmael's mother at this time. But Pharaoh and his household are getting some kind of disease. This is the word in the Hebrew, same word used for plague. Like the 10 plagues of Egypt, it's the same word there. We don't, and God gives this man who has not done anything wrong, right? Other than, he's a false worshiper and all this stuff. We can blame it on himself, but really it's Abraham's fault. Abraham's lie led God to keep his promise, saying, hey, Pharaoh can't get her pregnant. I'm going to have to give him a disease because I want to give you have to make your name great, your promise great. So I'm going to have to give him. So God has to keep his promise, and it puts if God keeps his promise. I don't know. This doesn't seem like it's because of Abraham he sends out this plague, and God tells Pharaoh, "Hey, you want to get out of this? Give Abraham his wife back." Of course, Pharaoh is upset, rightly so, and says, "Why don't you take your wife and leave?" And so they're sent out of Egypt. By chapter 13, they're back in the land of Canaan, back at Bethel. Bethel is one of those places they're going to go to a lot. Bethel means house of God. That's what it literally means in Hebrew, house of God. It's a holy site. And so we're going to be at Bethel a lot. Let's see. So time passes. We're not going to talk about everything we could about Abraham. Time passes. They live. Let's go on to Abraham and Lot. Abraham, if you read Romans 4 and James 2, he's remembered as a man of faith. Abraham is inclined to follow God on faith into the unknown. How many guys have been there, right? He just packed up his family and left. It's kind of scary, isn't it? Lot is known as a righteous man. 2 Peter 2, 6 through 8 declares Lot is a righteous man. It doesn't say he's an evil man. Lot did what was right. So Abraham and Lot are living together. Avram is the patriarch. And there's limited grazing capacity. Each man has grown wealthy, largely because of Abraham's lie. And they've got herds and wealth, and it's impossible for them to keep together. Hey, our shepherds are starting to fight for the grazing land. Our people are arguing with each other. We're going to have a civil war break out pretty soon. And instead of one side putting the other one under, Abraham could have called, I'm the ruler. He could have. But that doesn't seem to be Abraham's character at all. But he could have. They outgrew the land. And so, and Abraham, he could have just kicked his blood brother out. His nephew, often referred to as his brother, his blood brother, get out. Or, you know what, you would take the less of the land I don't really want no more. Abraham has that right. He could do that too. I don't want this land over here. You take it. But Abraham has an attitude that whatever the material loss, there must be peace between the men. And so Lot has his choice of land. And if you read the passage, Lot doesn't ask God at all which way he should go. He doesn't seem to be like, hey, I want the better land. He just seems to be Lot's choice of land is unwise. We seem to know, if you know your Old Testament, he's going to be in Sodom and Gomorrah. So obviously it didn't work out well for him. But put yourself in his shoes. it probably didn't seem like it was that bad of a decision. He saw that the land was fertile. Abraham did not want the land. Abraham had never gone into that land, so he's probably thinking, hey, this is a land that Avram doesn't want. You know, he seems to be looking for the same kind of attitude his blood brother has. Let there be peace. Let me choose some land that you've never shown any interest in. Now, there is a problem with his decision, though. That is that Sodom and Gomorrah are in that valley. Now, it seems like Lot felt like he could just live outside the city and not be inside the city. They're shepherds afterwards. They don't need city life. But the next time we see Lot, he's going to be sitting inside the city gates. So apparently his plan to stay outside the city and not be involved in those wicked cities, it didn't work. I don't know, maybe we're given some clues, you know. Lot's a righteous man. You know, righteous enough in its own is not enough. You must have faith. Faith must rule over your righteousness. I don't know. But since after the separation, Abraham goes into Canaan, and now he's finally left his family behind, like God said to in the first place. And his wandering takes on a new purpose, and that purpose is going to be conquest. Everywhere he goes, it will be given to him and his family. Yeah. Abraham will go to Hebron, which is a major area for travel. All the roads intersect there. It's political important. It's we'll see it again in the Davidic narrative in 2 Samuel 2 and chapter 15. It's a very important city. It's still an important city for the Arabs and the Jews. It's still a very important city even today. So he's going to travel up to Hebron, which will put us in chapter 15. Like I said, we're going to go fast through this, or faster anyways. Chapter 15, we see that this is the first time that Abraham is told the land will be given to him. Even the land that Lot chooses will eventually begin it says, after these things, the word of Yahweh came to Abraham in a vision, saying, "Do not be afraid, Abraham. I am your shield. Your reward shall be great." And Abraham said, "O Yahweh, my Lord, what will you give me? I continue to be childless, and my heir is Eleazar of Damascus." And Abraham said, "Look, have not given me a descendant. There are members of my household is my heir." And behold, Yahweh came to him, saying, "This person will not be your heir, but your own son will be your heir." And he brought him outside and said, "Look towards the heavens and count the stars. If you are able to count them," he said, "so shall your offspring be." And he believed in Yahweh, and he reckoned it to him as righteousness. And he said, "I am Yahweh who brought you out of Ur of the Chaldeans to give this land to you to possess it." And he said, "Yahweh, O Yahweh God, how shall I know that I'll possess it? And he said, take from me 3-year-old heifer and 3-year-old female goat and 3-year-old ram and turtle doves and young pigeons. And he took for him all these and cut them into pieces down the middle and put each piece opposite side of the other. But the bird he did not cut, and the birds of prey came down to the carcasses, but Abraham drove them away. And it happened as the sun went down and deep sleep fell upon Abraham. Behold, a great terrifying darkness fell on him. And Abraham said, you must surely know that your descendants shall be as aliens in the land, not their own, and they shall serve them, and they shall oppress them for 400 years, and the nation that they serve I will judge, and afterwards they shall go out with great possessions. Talking about the Exodus, aren't we? God's taking them through everything that's going to happen. And this is kind of like an amazing thing, like God saying, hey, it's coming. And this is all the great things that you're going to happen to your people. But Abraham is going to struggle with patience. Does God really know what he's doing? Maybe I was just talking to myself. And God, shows them all this land. And says, you're going to be the father of nations. And this land all around you, the land of the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Kadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Gebushites, the Jebusites, all that. I'm going to give you all that. The Jebusites, that's actually where Israel's at right today. Where the Jerusalem, they have taken from the Jebusites. I'm going to give you all that. And Abraham's in the land, descendants, and blessing in the Abrahamic covenant is saying, hey, all this is going to happen. Just be patient with me. Oh, next is Sarah, Hagar, and Abraham. I'm wondering, I know we don't have time to cover that. Tell you what, let's stop there. I know it's a little early, but I don't want to get started in on Hagar and Sarah and Abraham without being able to talk about like Ishmael and I know we don't have time to talk about all that. Some cool stuff coming up. Very cool stuff. But you guys can go ahead and read that in preparation for next week. That'll be chapters, I don't know how far we'll get. 16 for sure. 17, 18, 19, 21, 22. We'll probably get into 22. We'll probably get through 22. Let's shoot through 22 for next time. We might get farther than that. We might not. 18 through 22. Yeah. That's a lot bigger than they ever claim. They never fully claimed the promised land. Never. All the way up, and actually after King David claims the Palestine land, they'll actually start losing land because they start disobeying God. They will never fully claim the promised land. That's something that, and it all comes down to they stop listening. I mean, think about after, we'll jump the gun a little bit here, but think about what happens after Exodus, right? They go to where the land starts, they've left the Negev, because there's really nothing in between Egypt and Israel, that bottom part. There's a bunch of desert. Uncontrollable, unprotectable wildlife that nothing grows in desert. So they leave it, and they're going into what would be the staging ground of the whole, and they cower out, right? They become afraid. They don't follow God. They end up wandering in the desert that no one wants for 40 years, claiming some of the outskirt tribes. And then they conquer some of it, but they never conquer all the land. Even the land of the Israel that they're going to let people live that weren't supposed to live there. They're going to not kick out people that they should have kicked out. They're not even going to fully conquer it until the time of David, when they fully conquer the land that they do possess. And they'll never conquer this. And some people theorize that in the end, this, but I think the promise is so much bigger than Israel at this point. God's given the promise of His blessing to to those who believe in Him through the blood of Jesus Christ. So, yeah, can you imagine what would happen if they would have actually done what God wanted them to do? David, thanks for pointing that out.
One more time.
Yeah. No, they can't. He's going to give them land, blessing, and descendants. They can't gift that up. But what they don't fully take hold of the land because they don't fully follow through with His promises. They couldn't goof this up. They would have won every battle if they just said, "This is God's promise. Let's do it." Instead, Egypt's going to cause problems for them. The Assyrians are going to cause problems for them. I mean, they were supposed to be. I mean, read those rivers there. What verse was that thing? Real quick, 18. Yeah, on the covenant it says, "I'm to your offspring. I will Egypt to the Euphrates." That goes all the way from the Nile. Let me go back to that map. Let me go back to that map so you guys get a glimpse of how great land this is. Where was that map? Right here. All right, stop spinning. There we go. All right, so this is the Euphrates right here. This is the Nile. All of this is supposed to be Israel. Crazy, right? And what do they have? They conquer this and yeah. Let me see if I can. So yeah, they. Let me. Where's the? I want this button. All right. Yeah, they get very little land that they could have gotten, and they never will fully conquer it. Well, yeah, it's because they don't listen to God. They stop listening to God over and over again. These people keep coming up in their lives. This one, he's not worshiping God the same way these guys do. Like you're going to turn to false gods, and he can't. It's not that God, His promises didn't need any. He said, "I'm going to do this." It's not like if you bless me, but I can't do it if you don't listen. But then again, when Jesus comes, and this is actually kind of cool. After Jesus, in the book of Acts, they're right here, right? In this area. The diaspora had sent the Jews, the spreading of the Jews had sent them all, why is it? Wrong button. This one. Had sent the Jews all the way through this whole area. And so when Jesus dies and they start speaking in foreign tongues and they came down and they started spreading the word, all that land and even more, God spreads his word through all of it. Ain't that cool? Through the blood of Jesus Christ. Amazing. Give me chills. Give me chills. Just think about how God fulfilling his promises through Jesus in a way that we didn't expect, because his kingdom now, and actually when we talk about church history, a lot of our Christian forefathers are in the land of Egypt and Syria, which are now all Muslim controlled. It was one of the greatest, like Origen and Alexandria, and they were a nesting pot for Christian theology. Anyway, thank you, David. What a blessing.
The significance of cutting these animals in half.
Oh, yes.
And one of my footnotes here says, if I break this covenant, may it happen to me, whatever these creatures, if I break this covenant.
That very well may be true. The what he said is like he cut the animals in half, and it very well may be the idea behind that was if if I break this covenant, may this happen to me. And that often is the kind of stuff that we do see in the ancient Near East world. So the Bible doesn't actually expound on the issue, which means, one, that's not really important, but two, that we were already supposed to know and we don't.
That God keeps his word, and you'll never break it. And so he was saying, hey, you can be assured of this.
Yeah, God always keeps a promise. The dividing in two kind of is a symbolic of two parties meeting together. Suzerain and the suzerainty. Those are fun words. You guys can look those up later. It just means two parties in a covenant. But yeah, it very well might be. Anything else? Anything else? We are 3 minutes past. And I let you guys out early. Aren't you glad we let out early? All right. Let's close in prayer. Would anyone like to close us in prayer tonight?